but okay.
We're supposed to start. You're not supposed to be talking.
Well, I don't know if you happen to notice.
Woo! Wee! Woo!
Oh,
Whoa.
there it goes. I think I, you know, I know I say it a lot. I do, but is that like, is that him at the end hitting the firmament? Like, is that like the dome? Because
Well,
I mean, I know I didn't say it personally, but there was comments in the comment section, like when we were reading that. And by the way, like the more and more I read about it, it's crazy how many people, Jeff, Deep State Dana, it's crazy how many it's crazy how many people are actually in the flat earth. I'm like kind of blown away by it. And like I keep seeing people continuing to try to shut them down. It's like the old days with the eschatology stuff. I'm reading people getting on there and like calling people names, um, saying derogatory things, saying this is a dangerous conversation. We shouldn't really be talking about this. And it's weird. It's weird. It's all the people that don't believe in flat earth. None of them are people that believe in flat earth. It's a fascinating, very interesting dynamic. Just just mentioning, because of our intro music, but nevertheless, let's carry on. What what do we have? What do we
for our
have?
many listeners, the intro music includes Mad Mike Hughes blasting off into the sky to test and see if the world is flat by taking a bird's eye view. And there is some out there who thinks he may have bounced off of the actual firmament.
Which, if you've been listening to the show for a long time, you would know that. If you haven't, go back and listen. It's fun.
Well, there's evidence in the intro, right? You hear the first blast, that's him going up, and then what's that
Yep.
other noise? Like, what else
Well,
could
that's
it
what I'm
be other
saying.
than him hitting the firmament?
That's what I'm saying. Is that actually him? We don't know. I mean, maybe you do. I feel like I don't know. And I feel like we've discussed the fact that it's a little bit of a mystery. Some people say he did. Um,
Nobody says he hit the firmament, I don't think.
well, no, in the comment section, if you recall, I read some comments, or I read at least one comment, and I've heard, well, I take that back. I've read other comments since then that says he did bounce off the firmament. But nevertheless, I it's just interesting. I don't know. I mean, like I said, it's very reminiscent of the eschatology conversations that we used to have with people.
In that some people say even discussing this is off the table.
Oh yeah, you can no, oh absolutely. Like this is like you can't even go there. This is like, and now here's the thing, if it weren't for those people, I probably wouldn't have taken so much interest in it, to be honest. But it's because of those people that it's made me very, very interested in this subject.
So, what is on the DJ Ron show plate for tonight?
Well, I don't know. I don't know because um, previously we've been talking about um, some things that you've recently discovered, or deep state Dana, she's there. I hope she's there. I'm feeling for her. I'm feeling like she may have a toothache and not liking that, 'cause that's awful. But if she's there, she's recently been talking about some stuff that is near and dear, probably to all of us. And I haven't heard I haven't heard a whole lot from her other than like some initial information. I'm curious where she's at this point.
With her tooth.
With well, no, not with her tooth. I
Oh,
mean,
with her
it
pursuit of God.
yeah, with her pursuit of God
You
and
know, in that context, I got to tell you something I was surprised by this week.
yeah.
There's a guy I used to know named Ron, and he posted something about Jesus on Facebook.
Really?
Hmm.
Was that me?
Yeah,
Was that me? Was that the Can I read it? Do you mind if I read it?
I can read it or you can read it. I'm looking at it.
Okay, let me read it real quick.
All
It's
right,
out of
you're gonna read it. Oh, all right.
yeah, it's out of First Timothy 4:1. I guess depending on the translation that you have, but it says, at least according to what I posted, the Spirit clearly says that in latter times some will abandon the faith and follow deceiving spirits and things taught by demons.
And you put it with such a beautiful background. It's almost like one of those typical Bible verses where you think you're gonna read something real
Yeah,
comforting,
right.
real soft and friendly, something maybe to make me smile. And instead, as I scroll down to read the words on this beautiful picture of the sky with a mountain in all cursive text, it says that we're going to be leaving the faith for deceiving spirits taught by demons. What are you doing here? This is supposed to be flowery and fun.
So, well, here's the problem. When you admit stuff like that, Jeff, that's the things that indicate to me that you do think, that you are processing, that no, I am not wrong about Jeff, and that Jeff is fully aware of the things that I'm talking about, which I'm glad to know. Glad to know. So, did you like that? Did you enjoy?
I was just surprised to see you put something from the Bible.
Really? Somebody said that to me about 5 years ago, and I was a little shocked. I was like,
Was the last time you put a verse?
no, well, no. I mean, no. I put many verses since then. Um, but he said, I'm really glad. This guy said, I'm really glad to see. Which he didn't know me from Adam, number one. But he said, I'm really glad to see you posting stuff about Scripture. It's about time, something like that, right? I thought to
Hmm.
myself, I thought to myself, well, that's interesting, my friend, because I've been posting now at the time, by the way, at the time, I was heavily delving into and diving into and exploring eschatology. And I was posting all kinds of stuff and all kinds of scripture at the time. And when he said that, I thought to myself, uh, well, that's weird because I'm always posting stuff about the scripture. I mean, yeah, it's not necessarily feel good stuff, but I'm constantly saying stuff. I'm
Well, this
constantly,
was 5 years ago.
well, more actually more than 5 years ago. I'd say probably more like 7 to 8, to be honest.
Because I'm scrolling through your current Facebook feed and there's not a lot of Bible verses here.
No, no, not necessarily a lot of Bible
Got we got we
verses.
got a mix of Super Bowl, sarcasm, death, and politics. I would say
Yeah.
that's where we're at
Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's Tommy, Tommy, a big fan of Tom Brady.
Yeah,
Um,
a lot of Tommy, little love affair with
yeah.
Tommy, a love affair with death and axe murderers or killers. I'm not really sure what's going on there. You're kind of a weird guy.
You think? um,
So,
when people say like I'm different, I'm weird. I go, no, 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 you're not. And and if you knew me, you would go, no, no, I'm pretty normal actually.
oh man.
I'm always fascinated by that, by the way. I love when people do that. I read a lot of that online. I love the I'm unique, I'm different. Um, I'm the black sheep. You read a lot of that, and I go, yeah, that's, I know, it's not true, but I know.
And yeah, you're a funny guy. I'm reading through all of your posts, and you're a pretty funny guy. I just gotta say, I mean, there's a lot of good stuff here, a lot of good humor.
Oh gosh, I mean, that's what I think. Although it never, it never really gets a lot of attention, but I think to myself, I'm like, my God, my gosh, this is like funny. Like I laugh like out loud, like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot when I post stuff. And then I realize I'm like, maybe, maybe it's not so funny to people,
I
but
mean, you
I
got
think,
lots of Michael Myers humor on
yeah,
here.
I
I
mean, isn't
mean,
that funny? I mean,
it
I
is,
think
it
it is.
is, it is. I mean, in a sort of, uh, a disturbing way.
Dark and cryptic.
Sometimes, I mean, you got one with Michael Myers celebrating the new year.
Oh, with his smiling face.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. See, I, I happen to think that stuff is like very, very funny, but nobody, well, not nobody, but very few people do.
I see a big 12 likes on here. A lot of those are
Let's say,
ha-has, so there's people
yeah,
who get
yeah.
it.
No, there's people get no, there definitely people get it. No, no doubt. I mean, there are a few, not many, but a few just precious, precious souls out there that I love and that do get it and that understand the spirit.
The spirit like this one, how are unicorns fake but giraffes are real? Like, what's more believable? A horse with a horn or a leopard moose camel with a 40-foot neck? All right.
Yeah. No,
And then
why?
there's a picture of a man throwing gas on a fire and it says you and sad music. And then throwing gas. The gasoline is sad music, and then and the fire is problems. So you're just, oh my
Yeah.
gosh. All right.
Yeah.
So as Dana, the faithful truth teller, once said, we really get to this part of the show where we filtered out all the people who are wannabes, and now we got the serious listeners now. So
Sort of.
what are we talking about now? I got one
Sort
I
of.
just heard while I was waiting for something. I won't say what. I was looking into things and somebody posted online that there was a hearing in which James W. Carroll, director of the U.S. Office of National Drug Control Policy, was telling the world and Congress, I guess Ocasio-Cortez was there. That's how I found out about it. That more drugs are coming through the non-ports of entry than the ports of entry, which is a little bit different than what you hear in the news. And then it was pointed out somewhere that it really depends what you're measuring. So it says here, he said, quote, if you just go by weight, the numbers that I have from CBP for 2018 reflect the total weight of drugs at ports of entry in 2018 was 432,000 pounds of various drugs. Between ports of entry, that is, right, that's like the borders.
Mm-hmm.
For the same time frame, fiscal year 2018 was 476,000 pounds. Now, those numbers are similar to each other, but more is coming through. I'm sorry, more is intercepted. Forget what's coming through. More is intercepted in pounds coming through the non-ports of entry than the ports of entry.
Yes. Yes, which I'm surprised that it takes somebody to officially come out, some like official, right? Supposed official. That's really probably not an official. But I'm always a little surprised. Oh, sorry, I'm always a little surprised that it takes somebody like that to make a statement for anybody to pay attention to it. As
Oh no,
though,
no, hold on
as
here.
as,
Nope,
as though
nobody's paying
no,
attention.
no,
Nobody's
I'm
paying
sure, I'm
attention.
I'm sure, I'm
Nobody's
sure nobody
reporting on
is.
this. Nobody's reporting on the hearing that I know of.
I'm not surprised. I'm not
So,
surprised. But Jeff, think about something. Think about something for a minute. Just stop and I'm not gonna interrupt your thought, but think about it. Is that really any surprise? Are you like shocked by that at all? I
hey,
mean, is that news to you?
I found the Washington Post actually is reporting on it.
AP,
You'll
I'm sure is.
Washington Post, they're on it.
AP has to be on it.
And let's see what they say. Anyway, I already read it before, but when I say that nobody reports on it, people don't focus on it.
Yeah. So think about it for a minute. Stop and pause. Think about it for a minute. That is something that people have been saying for a very long time. And you came across it. Let me ask you, are you surprised? Are you surprised? Are you
I
surprised by that
am
finding?
No, but I am surprised how once again the media has been shown to have what seems to be a clear misleading of the information. And it is, I guess I'm always surprised by Ron. I am continually bamboozled into thinking they're actually reporting stuff.
Really?
I don't know what's wrong with me. I would think that it's hard for me to imagine they're really ignoring news stories that go against a certain narrative.
Well, you being um and I don't mean to put you on the spot. I'm not calling you out at all.
All right, this is
I'm
gonna be
no,
good.
I'm no, I'm not. I'm not. I'm really not. I'm really not because I value your opinion, as I've stated many times. You have been influential in my thinking. So I value definitely what you have to say. I'm a little shocked by that statement because, and again, I'm not putting you on a spot and I don't expect you to address this at the moment. You've been, in the past at least, very vocal about like pro-life kind of stuff and pro-choice kind of stuff. So I'm gonna put both in there. But you've been very vocal in that arena, and I know for certain that you've been able to observe the media's lack of attention towards one particular side of that argument. And when I think about what you're saying now, I'm confused because that should be no shock to you, Jeff. And I'm wondering why it is.
I um I don't know. I was just thinking of another one that
Did
really
I did I did I did I make sense, or am I like speaking in some like cryptic language that you don't understand?
I,
Do I have to
I'm I,
spell it
I'm
out?
I'm continually naive.
Okay, so let me spell it out then. And again, this isn't to call you out. This isn't to prove you wrong. This isn't to say anything because I'm not trying to do that. I'm just trying to have a discussion, as I hope you know by now. But you've been very active in the past with the pro-life and pro-choice movement, to the point, to the extent that you've actually taken action. Um, you've done many things to represent a particular side of that argument and that movement. Um, More than anybody I know personally, more than anybody I know personally, you have personally taken and gone to great lengths to get involved in that argument, in that movement. And I know for a fact, because you've noted it many times, including from your favorite website and your favorite news channel, that they do not report fairly or accurately on the pro life movement. That's that's no secret. I mean,
Well, it
is
is
it?
kind of a secret because nobody knows about it.
Oh, okay. But but you personally, why you're shocked by that, I'm a little taken back by, I guess, because of your own experience, because you've already been down this road and you've already seen these things and you've already actually made note of these things many times.
Yes, and
Um,
I don't know why I was shocked then and I'm shocked now. I don't know what's wrong with me, Ron. Maybe I'm just hoping the best for these people, but the truth is it's ridiculous. Here's the one that I was shocked by long ago. It's happening right now. It's called 40 Days for Life. I'm at the website, 40 Days for Life, and it says 40 Days for Life is happening now through April 14th in 377 locations all across the globe. I don't know about you, Ron, but 377 different locations doing basically a type of protest for 40 days sounds kind of like a big deal, no?
oh, very significant.
You would think,
Very,
right? And
yes.
what they do is they, depending on who's at what location, and they will either pray for 24 hours a day, or they will do from like 7 to 7. I think those are their two schedules, 12 hours a day. And so I'm looking at a map here of the United States, and I'm looking at, I sometimes I forget I can share this with you, right? So let me share this little screen shot here for all of our faithful podcast listeners. They won't be able to see this. They have to tune in live to see this, you know? You know what I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Ron?
Yeah, I do.
But for those faithful Hangout participants, they get to
Well,
see
they can go.
this.
They can go on YouTube and watch it, right?
That's true. They can watch the YouTube after party. Anyhow, hopefully you'll be able to see this in just a second.
By the way,
This is
you've got
called
some fans.
dead
You've
air
got some
time, by the way.
fans. You've got some fans.
Hey Ron, can you check that out? Can you see that?
Yes.
You can?
Yes.
What do you see?
I see a bunch of map dots of the United States, and it looks like exactly what you're talking about. All these
Okay.
people, and wow, and interesting enough, here's what not surprising because of
Hey,
the
guess what? I'm zooming out. What do you notice?
yeah, no, it's big. It's
It's
big.
worldwide.
Yeah, it's
So
big.
we're
Yeah.
talking about a worldwide event in which people for 40 days
You notice
spend
where they're
time and
not? Do you notice where they're not?
Let me see. Antarctica? Let's take a look at Antarctica. No, no one in Antarctica.
I'm not
I
seeing
mean,
a whole lot, I'm not
not
seeing a
there.
whole lot.
One, two, three, four, five, four in Australia, one in New Zealand, one in
Not
Hawaii.
not
Look
seeing
at
a
the
whole
United
lot in
States. It looks like it's on fire with dots. A lot in
not seeing
Europe,
a not seeing a whole lot in Asia.
in Pakistan, none in Pakistan or India, nothing in Asia. Okay.
Where's
Well,
Russia? Where's
it is
Russia on
spreading though from the United States. Now, you would think that this might be worth, a news story, maybe, maybe.
it?
Let's go to my favorite news organization. Maybe this year they're going to cover it. Let's see here.
They are covering Boeing.
All right. All right.
I have noticed that.
40 days for life.
Oh,
Hmm.
they finally decided to cover Jesse Smollett a couple like
Let me,
last week, by the
hold
way.
on a second here. 40 days. Let me put quotes on this. 40 days for life. Two results.
Hmm.
Legal battle over Missouri clinic could foretell abortion fight in other states. So that's from October 2018. And should the U.S. reconsider its stand on foreign aid for abortion clinics? So both of them are in the context of something else. So we have two news results in their entire history of doing this, and they're not even stories about it. They're just mentioning them as a passing point because it's related to some other thing. Oops,
Yeah.
I guess they just forgot to cover it. Now, that was the one thing, because I have a clinic near my house and I would see them out there. So I stopped one day to ask them what it was for. And I could not believe that it wasn't just at my clinic, but it was a 40-day thing that was being done. And it wasn't just there, but it was in all of the United States. And I was thinking, this is crazy. There's all these people out here with signs and they're praying. And then I discover it's in the entire United States. It's all over the place, and you don't hear a single news story about it. And that was my first real moment. Same thing happened with the March for Life. There's no news coverage about the March for Life, not they don't bring on the experts to discuss the different sides of the issue, even though there's hundreds of thousands of people there each year. Now, the 40 Day for Life, what's even crazier, Ron, is it's twice a year. So that's 80 days of the year this organization is doing this.
Yes.
It's crazy.
Yep. Um, are you shocked?
I am shocked. I guess I'm just dumb. I don't know. I just
No,
like
no, no, no.
how can they be doing all this stuff and like they get no coverage?
Problem is you've already proven that you're not dumb. Um, that's the problem. So I'm gonna say you're just being nice.
Being nice.
Yeah,
Now
you're just
I
being
won't I won't
you're
say
very
where the
you're very diplomatic. How about that?
I won't say where the co-star lives, but let's see what's going on here. Something's going on in Pomona. There's a Planned Parenthood in Pomona. And I can see here March 6th to April 14th. Sign up for vigil hours. So you have to sign up, and I've done it before. There's a calendar and there's people involved. And anyway, you get the point. The point is 40 Days for Life is a great example of the news story that's not a news story.
What do you think about that?
Um, I think they're actually doing a pretty good job controlling the narrative. Because then the stuff they do cover, we end up talking about, and the stuff they don't cover, we don't. And they're doing a pretty good job controlling the narrative. I do wonder what would happen in this country if they gave the pro-life side, I like to think of it as pro-child equality, but if they gave that side a fair shake, meaning they didn't just cover it never, and when they did cover it, they actually treated it like a real issue, that mattered. It'd be
Oh,
interesting to see what would happen.
how about wouldn't it be interesting to know where those locations, um, the Planned Parenthood locations, are, um, where they exist
You
and
mean
where
like
they,
they do with the other marches and the other protests where they publicize them and they basically do free advertising and they tell the whole world where it is and what's going on and all the details?
yes.
Yeah, it's also interesting. What would happen if they stoked the flames of this movement? It has completely stoked itself. It is a growing movement that is occurring under the radar of the world, and the only reason most people know about it is because they see the people out in front of the clinics.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
Yeah.
only way you would know about it.
Right.
That's the only way I
Right.
knew about it.
Right. 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 Which, at the end of the day, probably, I'm assuming it, for you, it's pretty interesting. What do you think about that though? I mean, do you think that they just live in some bubble and they just don't know what's going on, or do you think that
They're
they,
intentionally controlling the narrative.
yeah,
I wish I could talk to them.
yeah,
That'd be
yeah,
my
I know,
answer.
yeah, yeah, me too, me too, by the way.
I will say that where I work, there is a larger liberal presence than a conservative presence. And I will say that there is somewhat of an obliviousness to the other side. And in that respect, I do sometimes think that it might just be 90% liberals in the room and they just are somewhat oblivious. There is that element to it, but I can't help but wonder, like, how could they never know about this issue? I just
Well,
that's the part that I don't understand. And when it comes up, do they think, no, it's not. Let's not cover that because it's not
well,
interesting, or do they
mm-hmm,
they they really sit around in a meeting? Because these are people sitting at meetings, coming up
mm-hmm.
with what they're gonna do. Do they really? Does it really come up, and then they say, let's not cover that?
Yeah, or think about think about this. Is it a topic that they've said, well, we don't want to cover this, for these specific reasons, which is probably here. Well, I'll say this. I sometimes I'll go on NPR and I think to myself, well, no wonder people aren't asking questions. No wonder people are uninformed, because if that's your chosen and exclusive news site, they don't report on a lot of things.
Who? What?
NPR.
Yeah.
They don't report on a lot of things.
You know where I
They don't
I
they don't cover they
I,
don't cover a lot of they
I
they don't ask a lot of questions.
yeah, you know where I encountered this in the clearest way ever. It was when I was in the summertime. I have time off, so I was doing some work on things in the garage, and of course, looking for something on the radio, and I discovered the Catholic radio. And it was pretty interesting. Some of the shows I got into for just a little while in the summer while I was working on some things,
Was
listening
it
to the different perspectives.
was it AM radio?
Yeah, it was AM.
Yeah.
So it's AM radio. So it's pretty interesting. I like to explore other perspectives and things. So it was interesting learning about this radio program. Anyhow, in between the different shows, they would do news, and they would cover pro-life topics relatively often. And they would just do little news stories here because there's lots of news about this topic. There's people being attacked at clinics. There's legislation that's happening. There's just a lot of ins and outs on this topic. It's actually a pretty versatile topic from the, like I said, the people being attacked at the clinics to the legislative stuff that's going on. There's a lot to talk about. And so what I found so interesting was, while it's not every single time they do the little news program between the shows, it was common enough that it was like, oh, like that's the way it's supposed to sound. This is a real issue that a lot of people care about. There's a lot of activity around it, and there's a lot of interesting stories. So that was where I heard it. But also, what was in there? They would daily, they would give a little Pope update, where the Pope is today and what he did. And of course, that shows you their personal bias. But most importantly, and I think this is the most important part, is that it was just the news. It wasn't Catholic, it was just the news, but it was the news that you quite clearly listening knew was what they cared about. So then when it comes to paradigm shifts, you realize, okay, these are Catholics and these are the things they care about, so those are the things they're reporting on. Likewise, CSNBC, NBC, whatever, I don't know, NPR, Fox, these are all just people too, people with philosophies, religions, ideas, right? And so when you see the news, it's through the lens of those people. And when you really step back and look at it, the Catholic news is just as much news as the NPR news, but it's completely different.
Completely different. And um, I don't know a whole lot of college campuses. In my experience, a whole lot of college students that listen to Catholic news, but I do know a lot of college students that listen to NPR. And I do know that NPR is very, very popular on college campuses. Interesting enough.
Yeah, and so this is where I got at least the well understood idea that these are all biased. And I'm not one who says there's a problem with bias. My problem is that people act like there is no bias with NPR. And that is the furthest thing from the truth because if you compare them to a Catholic news station, now someone might say, oh, no, no, it's the Catholic ones that are biased. And it's like, no, no, they're all biased. They all have a certain, let's say, eye for a certain type of news story, what they deem as news, what they feel is worth spending time on. And today on NPR, I turned it on, and honestly, I know we have one particular fan who says, "Why are we always harping on NPR?" Honestly, I don't listen to a lot of news, and the radio is where I go mainly when I'm doing something or on my way somewhere. So it's not that I actually listen to a lot of news and I just pick on NPR. It's just that I don't listen to a lot of news, and NPR happens to be my go-to when I'm traveling between places, so I have something to listen to. So with that caveat, I kind of lost what I was saying. Oh, so NPR today, they covered somebody who wrote a play about, or it was a movie about a transgender person who wanted to be um, basically like a ballerina or something like this, and it's a whole movie about that. Now, I may have completely missed the story and these different things, but but I apologize to anyone who knows what the heck this is all about. But they were talking about this, and again, I was thinking to myself, where'd they get this story from, and why are they focusing their time and attention on, they went into it for, I'd say, it had to be 10, 15 minutes of coverage of this ballerina transitioning um, person. Okay, fine. But of course, they wouldn't cover 40 Days for Life, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. What do you think about that?
Well, that's what I mean by to say that one is biased and the other isn't, I think, is to not have, let's say, become woke. That's right, Ron. We're woke. So
Well,
I'll call myself woke in that I realize everyone has bias,
is it
even
is
those who
it
say they're not biased. However, I can still say that and still be startled. I don't know why I'm still startled, but I still get startled that they don't cover certain things. It just seems so obvious. Why wouldn't they cover certain things? Um, I don't know. I just,
is it simply just being biased? Is that all it is?
well, that's where the puzzle lies, and that's where you'd have to talk to somebody because I don't know how you could figure that out without talking to somebody. Because you could get into the heads of these people and say, oh, they don't want to cover it for the reasons I think you said a second ago as a possibility. They don't want to spread the word basically or give any airtime to these ideas because it could gather some steam, you know? Maybe there's that actual thought process. And the hardest thing of all is I would guess, and I could be wrong here, but if that is the thought process, nobody's going to come out and say it.
Well, nobody there in that organization is going to come out and say it, but I think there's plenty of other people that monitor the news that make their living examining reporting and reporters and what is being covered in the media. There's plenty of organizations out there that examine those kind of things and point out some very interesting things. And that is, it seems to be far beyond just being biased.
So I'm doing a news search. Maybe you can see it here. I just did 40 Days for Life with quotes on it. I got 5,880 results. We have Life Site News, which is a pro equality website. We have Catholic Philly. Uh, uh, got the story. Now look at this story, Ron. This is what I was telling you. It's so interesting when you start paying attention to other news sources. Two violent attacks against 40 Days for Life volunteers in Britain. That sounds like an interesting story, no?
Absolutely.
Anyhow, the Daily Gazette, I don't know what that is. CBN News. Oh, great. CBN, right? The Catholic Sun, Wabi News, Life Site News, the Daily Gazette again. I don't know what that is. Life Site. Oh, CBS 19. Look at this. CBS 19. It's a local news station, did something on it. They did Tyler pro-life advocates begin 40 days for life campaign. So a local news organization may have done something. That's nice. KSFY, East Texas Matters. East Texas Matters. Catholic San Francisco. Christian Today. Catholic Philly. Why are all these people doing the news stories?
Yeah.
Where are the main news organizations? How come nobody notices this giant movement that's happening
Yeah.
and people being attacked again?
Including, including, by the way, conservative news sites. Have you ever noticed that? Or
I don't
supposedly
know.
conservative news sites?
I don't know. I don't know. I
Um,
don't know. I don't know.
well, I have. I have the silent majority that
Did you see my screen?
um yeah.
Have you ever seen
Yeah.
that before?
No, I haven't, but
This is like classic. Get that screenshot and put it someday. Search 40 Days for Life News. Google News. There are no items to show. Ice cream cone upside down. Now that's what the heck? So look at right here, watch. Can you see my screen? It says there's these three stories, and then it says view more or view all stories. I'm gonna view all 40 Days for Life stories. Here we go. Click ice cream cone. There are no items to show. I've never in my entire life seen this before. Have you seen that?
No, no, I
And
haven't.
how classic can that be? So Google News just can't find any stories, and there might not be very many written about 40 Days for Life.
Jeff, how dare you? How, how dare you point this stuff out? I mean,
Oh, now, can you think of a news story currently that's big news that's nothing news? Maybe something about, I don't know, Kanye's
well,
always in the news.
how about something that's disappeared? How about that?
Wait. You're talking about that one story that you were interested in. But before we
Yeah.
go there, what's something you've heard about in the news that everyone's talking about? Something stupid. Anything you can think of? I can't think of anything because I'm not really paying attention. But
Um,
anything in the news right now? Something
anything
dumb.
Well, something dumb. Recently, this dumb story where people are pretending as though they're like shocked by it, and that is like these celebrities and these wealthy people that have been caught paying for entry into their into colleges.
Okay, so
Um,
college. Um, the celebrities paying they're like bribing basically, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so everybody seems to be shocked by this as though this is some revelation.
And who
Um,
was the movie star?
uh, you know, I think not fully sure, but, she's there's a couple, if I remember. She's not that significant, but there's a couple of them out there that have been caught. And those are the only there's probably much more. I'm sure.
Okay, it's called Operation Varsity
I did read
Blues.
Brian
Op
Bart.
Hey, I got a good one. Are you ready? I'm gonna search
Hold
Operation
on.
Varsity
Somebody
Blues.
sent somebody sent me something. I
Hey,
won't
hey,
name.
Ron,
Yeah.
Operation Varsity Blues. I just searched it with quotes on it. How many hits?
How
Two
many?
million 670,000 results. How is that even possible?
on on this topic that we're discussing
Yeah,
currently?
let's do in the past month. So this is Operation Varsity Blues. And if I do a search on that, oh, I got another ice cream cone. Hey, maybe that's just the new thing with Google. That was disappointing. I really
Well,
thought that
that's
was a
the fact that here. Why don't you do this? Because the story that I'm talking about, I'm not surprised that Google has got the ice cream cone up. But how about the Trump Russian collusion uh, situation? Can you Google that?
Okay, 1 second here, but just take a look at this. Operation Varsity Blues search 2 million results, right? That story has traction, as they say, right? And dare we say it, that it fits into a certain narrative, rich, paying their way, right? It's also gossipy, kind of fun,
Yep.
but in the end,
Yeah.
what's the what's the what's the end of that story? It just means that some people with a lot of money paid some people off so their children could get into college.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not denying that that's newsworthy. I'm just pointing out that it's amazing that stuff like this dominates the headlines. And then, something like 40 Days for Life doesn't get any coverage whatsoever. That's all. And the point's been made. And I think my point is clear. And I think for our hundreds of listeners, our thousands or millions, it's abundantly clear that the current news organizations have, let's call it an agenda or a bias, whatever you want to call it, which comes out not necessarily in whether they report on an individual story truthfully or not. That's a whole nother thing. I'm just simply saying in the items that they cover, just in what they cover, what they run, what they pay attention to. And if you think about the end result of that, the populace's minds will be on what it is they're covering. And so people will be circulating and discussing the next day at work the general trends of what's being discussed. And so there's a lot of power there. And if they never discuss certain things, then nobody will ever discuss it. And um, it's just so interesting. And I wonder how much control they do have. It sure seems like they have quite a bit because I'll walk into my job and colleagues of mine will be talking about the stuff that the news chose to cover. And they won't be talking about the things that they didn't. So,
Do you
so interesting.
remember?
So
Well,
interesting.
do you remember the quote from Malcolm X from a few weeks back?
Um, no,
Oh, well, um, essentially, essentially, what you're saying is
I'm
that the
assuming he
news.
made it before he died a long time ago.
Well, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean,
I'm sure
he's been
they. I'm sure, and I'm sure.
wasn't a seance or something.
Well, yeah. Oh, by the
It's like
way,
50 years ago. Quote.
yeah. By the way,
You're talking about an old quote of Malcolm X about the
hmm
news.
yes,
What
yes.
is it?
Well, let's look it up. Do you have the ability to look up what he said, or should I do it?
It says quote by Malcolm X. If you're not careful, the newspapers will have you hating the people who are being oppressed and loving the people who are doing the oppressing. This quote?
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one.
That's not it, but that's a
It's
good one.
no, that's well, it's along the lines. It essentially he said that they have the ability to make the guilty look
I
innocent,
got it.
and the
The
innocent.
media,
Uh-huh.
the media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent.
Yeah, yeah. Do you see that to be true?
Um, well, since he was saying it then and I'm seeing it now, I think that I see it to be true, except I do wonder how the internet is playing into all this because I can't help but believe from what I've seen directly that the internet has put a um shall I say almost like a muzzle on the beast. There's almost like a, as Alex Jones would say, there's an info war. And
Yeah.
I'm a fan of Alex Jones. I don't know that I've even watched him very much, but the few clips I have seen have been his more extreme clips, and they just leave me laughing because he's such a strange guy. I mean, I watched the one where he had the horse mask on, and I don't know. So I'm guessing that at other times he has better content, but the few things I've seen have been quite crazy. So I know very little about him, but his title InfoWars and what Malcolm X just said and what I'm seeing as time has gone on, it does appear that the internet may have um, become a force to reckon with the news media controlling the narrative.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's probably why many mainstream news organizations have shut down their comment section, all in the name of, you know, stopping hateful speech. But really, if you look at it, it's most likely stopping the truth in what's actually coming out. Now, for example, we've discussed, many times, couple stories, and whether we've demonstrated it directly or just talked about it, that what they often report is different than reality. Most recently, and I'm sure, um, well, I haven't seen a whole lot on NPR, but the Jesse Smollett story, the Covington High School kids, not seeing a whole lot on that, although there's a lot going on with both of those stories. They've disappeared, no surprise. But I mean, both of those stories. Now here's the here's the thing. If you if you watch or listen to, pay attention to, whether online or social media, and you watch their commentary on these things, I'm going to call them the more conservative side of news, and what progressives and liberals will call fake news. Um, they're usually giving a different narrative, a different side of the story, which, from my experience, tends to be the more accurate side of the story, and ultimately um, becomes the things that at the end of the day you go, wow, that news organization was reporting, you know, these facts, and lo and behold, when all the truth starts coming out and the mainstream media has moved on to a different topic, we end up finding out, wow, well, that was all true. That was actually what was happening. That was actual news. Um, anything come to mind? I mean, those two stories I mentioned. Does that ring true for you?
The way things come and go.
Well, no, not the way things come and go, but take the Jesse Smollett story.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you, as you know, I was paying pretty close attention to it,
Mm-hmm.
intentionally paying close
Yeah, on your
attention
on your
to
Facebook page, I saw the meme of a little girl running around with the news, and
it. Yeah, and I had
and
sent
and you're
you,
not
I
making light of that stuff, but you're making light of the story and how it seemed like a ridiculous story.
yes, yes, yes. I'm not making light of it at all. I mean, if that was true, that's awful. That's horrible. It's disgusting. But many people were pointing out that there was some serious problems with the story, and it caught my attention, and it caught the attention of a lot of people. And so there was no absence of news organizations which they would categorize as, depending on where you are, fake news or right-wing news, extreme news, right? Independent news sources that were saying there's some serious problems with this story. It's not adding up. And, I'd sent you, through the messenger, a number of different stories from different news organizations, from CSNBC to MSN to CNN, all kinds of stuff, giving you a variety of perspectives on that story. Even going back to some of the initial interviews that were conducted with him on the more what they would refer to as mainstream media. And when you boil it down at the end of the day, you go, well, the initial stories that were being reported by the mainstream media, um, and you know, of course, there was all your normal players coming out and saying, this is awful. This is the America that we're under now with this president.
Trump's America.
Yeah, Trump's America, and this is where we are. And it all turned out to be an elaborate scheme. Now, if you were paying attention to all sides of the story, that wouldn't have been a shock to you, and um, that wouldn't have been something that you go, oh wow, like I had no idea. But if you were paying attention to multiple news sources, you'd go, well, once again, my gosh, once again, the more conservative side of the media was actually reporting this story accurately. And they were saying that there were problems with what he was saying. And it turns out that indeed there were problems with what he was saying. Same thing goes with the Covington High School story. Immediately, it came out. There was a story. The white kid was smirking. That became the big thing. He was racist. The hat was the new Ku Klux Klan kind of narrative, and now it turns out, as many were reporting early on, that's no, that's not what happened. This is what actually happened. The story is completely different than what the media was saying, and now they're reporting the lawsuits that are taking place. They're reporting the retractions that are taking place by all these news stories or news organizations. But again, you're probably, I mean, not your, probably. I read NPR and listen to NPR quite a bit. It's almost completely absent from their reporting of how this is actually playing out. Not true
Yeah,
though.
it's
Not
it's
true.
it's
Not true. If
it's
you're listening to conservative news, you know exactly what's going on.
so you're pointing out that when the story is one way, it's all over the place, and then as the exact same story shifts in its in what actually took place, then it's like it's dropped. So there's a clear awareness of the story at first, but it's not like they suddenly forgot about it or it disappeared. It's still there, but they then begin to not cover it as much after it takes on a new meaning.
Yeah, well, like I said, like I've mentioned a couple times, we have a friend that's mocked and ridiculed Rush Limbaugh, as he likes to call him. Rush Limbaugh, we'll refer to him as Rush Limbaugh at the moment, but Rush Limbaugh refers to them, and that is the mainstream media, as the drive-by media. And the drive-by media will throw out stories, completely false narrative, and people that aren't paying attention just kind of go with it. That's what they believe, and then it drops. But if you're paying attention to the story and you're watching it and keeping an eye on it, then you start to realize, well, gosh, that's nothing like they were originally reporting.
Yeah.
Okay. By the way, uh, goes into a lot more than just the stories that we're currently talking about.
Well, that's the thing that we're talking about in general is how much bias is going on here? How much is ignorance? How much is choices? How much is them actually trying to spin a web for us innocent little flies to get stuck in. Hey, I got a random thing I got to tell you about. I
Yes.
searched what you talked about because I didn't realize what you were sharing about. And it's I searched news organizations turn off comments. And the first story I clicked on actually used NPR as an example. And in it, they have a, a pretty good little story of how NPR went from one thing to another. So it says in 2008, NPR introduced its readers to the commenting system. And it said, quote, "We are providing a forum for infinite conversations on npr.org. Our hopes are high. We hope the conversations will be smart and generous of spirit. We hope the adventure is exciting, fun, helpful, and informative." And then it says,
Yeah.
"And an adventure
Yeah.
it has been, but not so much a positive one. 8 years and millions of toxic exchanges later, NPR announced the abrupt end of the experiment. Quote, after much experimentation and discussion, we have concluded that the comment section on npr.org stories are not providing a useful experience for the vast majority of our users." End quote. That's interesting, huh?
Well, yeah, very interesting because
And that's Matthew Green, and the article's no comment why more news sites are dumping their comment sections. And this is got a discussion of a variety of things, but they actually used NPR as an example.
yep,
Anyway,
yep.
you were going to say,
Well, that thank you for pointing that out. But I was going to say many of the YouTubers or the independent news organizations that I have followed um, frequently point to their comment section as a source of really, really good information, regardless of the fact that sometimes people disagree with them and point out things that may contradict or provide that is contradictory to what they're saying. So big difference in that. So I would say, um, the reason why I think, and many people think, the reason why, you know, news organizations like NPR have turned off their comment section is because they've had lots and lots on there and point out that the stories that they're reporting, if you want to call it bias or misleading or just not factual, they're pointing those things out. And so those are the things that they're calling, toxic or fake news, things like that. And it turns out that's not true at all. It turns out that the comedy very useful, informative, and a lot of good content.
so I guess Jensen is an NPR spokesperson, and they said, quote, "We all like to have this idea that we can engage with readers and reporters," end quote, Jensen said. And then, quote, "But in reality, that just wasn't the way it was working. It didn't seem there was an easy way to fix that," end quote. So that's some personal remarks from someone from NPR talking about the situation. And they said, "I think it's disappointing that the commenting platform didn't work the way that it could." Um, Even though they said, "I think that the public engagement needs to be a key part of the public media organization." Now, there's a really funny study out there. Now, this article doesn't say NPR um, used this study to make their decision, but I guess there's a study out there, and it concludes that um, When readers are exposed to uncivil, negative comments at the end of the article, they are less trustful of the main content. Now, what's funny about that, Ron, is they're characterizing the comments as uncivil, negative, and so forth. But in truth, I read that study headline conclusion as really funny, right? That if you
Hmm.
let the people discuss the article directly below the article, they're less trustful of the content of the article.
Right.
And then if that's the study, to respond to that and say, well, let's just get rid of these comments.
Well, well, it kind of goes back to the early days. I'll call it our early days in our career of these discussions, and goes back to the early days when we had experienced the same things, and people, as we've noted, said, "Well, these topics are dangerous. We have to stop this. This is causing division. This is." Um, I see no difference. I see no difference. I see it's the same play. It's the same thing. And so, I mean,
Want to hear a
I
quote?
yeah, yeah, yes,
It says, but without moderators or fancy algorithms, he added, comment sections are prone to anarchy. Too often they devolve into racist, misogynistic maelstroms where the loudest, most offensive, and stupidest opinions get pushed to the top, and the more reasoned responses drowned out in the noise. So that's another person. That would be Jonathan Smith of Vice News, in announcing his publication's move in late 2016. So Vice News got rid of their comments also. This is a really interesting story. I didn't know about this, Ron. So all these news organizations are removing the comment sections because they just don't like what's down there.
yeah,
They don't like the people talking
right,
because
right,
they're quote racist, misogynistic maelstroms of whatever mouse. Anyways, that might be true, but like I don't know. I can't help it. My immediate response seems to be just let the people be. Like if there's a racist on
yeah.
there, like that's
You would
unfortunate, but
think,
like what are we trying to do? Are
yeah,
we trying to hide? Are we trying to act like those racists don't exist if we just eliminate them from the comment section?
right,
Or how
right,
about we deal with those
right.
racists?
Yeah, yeah. How about we shut them down with truth? How about we just publish what's actually happening, and
All right. So let's say we
on
had
the on
a
the
let's say we had a success here on this little show and there was a real angry there was a mouse store what do you how do you say that word? A maelstrom of horribleness going on in the comments section. Would that bother you?
No, no, it would not. No, it
What
would
if
not.
that
No, no, not
what
at
if
all.
what if those people who were fighting it out and those silly and ridiculous things were overshadowing the more reasoned responses? Would you think maybe we should get rid of these comments?
No, no, I wouldn't. I
because
would. That.
because reason wasn't winning the day. So we
Yeah.
we took the upper hand and we said, ah, we're going to do what's right and not let people talk.
Right. We're gonna shut down the conversation. We're not we're not gonna let people talk about what's actually happening, and
because
we're not
because
gonna
the
let
fools are raining.
right, right, because truth can't, I mean, because the article is overshadowed by what people are saying, which is fascinating. I mean, but no, again, I guess no surprise, because that's a frequent kind of play. I mean, you look at recently, which I'm not kind of mixed feelings on it, but recently. back in the news is the idea of freedom of speech on college campuses, right? Um, Over and over again, you see that certain speakers are prohibited or banned from coming on college campuses, and you have to ask yourself, well, why? I mean, if they're wrong and if they're just completely delusional, well, let them come on and let them do their thing and let people decide. I feel like I feel like it's almost as though, like the news organizations or whoever decides to do that is saying, well, people aren't smart enough to decide on their own what is truthful and what's not, and so therefore we have to kind of shut it down. And please don't listen to that because that's not what we want you to hear.
And this is why
That's
you
pretty.
find the flat Earth thing interesting, because the flat Earth thing is the same phenomena is occurring there. People just won't want to talk about it.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, yeah, that's a perfect example. I mean, I
And
go,
you,
okay,
it,
so
yeah,
let
and you,
let these let the flat earthers spin out of control. Let them say what they're gonna say. Let them completely go off the edge.
yeah, and then what
Um,
are we worried about?
what are we worried about? What's the problem? What's the issue?
Like,
I I'm not understanding, which ultimately makes me go, well, there's obviously there's some interesting stuff going on because there wouldn't be such a bizarre reaction to people saying these things because there's here's the thing, there's plenty of opportunities to observe people that do say bizarre things and people just dismiss and there's no argument over it and just people squash it and it goes away. But whenever you get these topics that people become very unhinged over and they feel like they feel uncomfortable talking, and you've got a certain group of people that just adamantly, you cannot talk about this, cannot ask those questions. Well, why what exactly are you worried about? What are you worried about? Why are you so worried about that? What's the problem?
I mean, certainly if you have a monopoly on what's out there, there are benefits because then you don't have to even address some of those issues. But I think the moment that one thinks about what's being stated there, that's kind of uh, the place that novels are written about, where they try to control what's out there, where the news media, like it almost, North Korea, you hear about North Korea, you hear about China, you hear about these places where they try to control the information that's out there. And most people have a knee-jerk reaction to that and they say, no, 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 that's not a good thing. At least that's what I thought. I thought most people would say that's not good if people are trying to control the information out there so that people aren't exposed to the bad things and they're only exposed to the so-called good things. I think I always thought that that was most people viewed as a bad thing to have all those filters on there, and then I thought it was better when you had a free flow in society, freedom of speech, where you let the horrible Nazis say their Nazi stuff, and you let the flat earthers say their thing. You let
Mm-hmm.
the Christians, a lot of people think Christians are nuts. Let the
Yeah.
Christians say their thing. Let the people walk around saying the world's going to end next week.
Yep.
Okay, you let them go and just let everyone have at it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there you have the comments section. It gets pretty nutty.
Yeah. Well, for instance, I don't know if you remember Harold Camping, or I think his name was, several years
Sounds
back.
familiar. He
Yeah, he
had
was.
the date of the end of the
Yeah,
world. And I think he
Yeah,
adjusted it once or twice. I don't know.
yeah, exactly. Which interesting enough, very publicized news story. It was big in the news. A great example of what I've talked about. It seems like, well, nobody had an issue with him saying those things. Matter of fact, they uh, they were reporting on it for the brief time that it became news because it became close to the date, and they let it come, they let it pass, and that was it. Boom, done. You know, and so there was no problem with it. So it's like I don't know if you've noticed the climate, what they call climate deniers, right? That's the big thing
Hmm.
now. Um, they refer to people that disagree with global warming uh, now, which is called climate change. Previously, global cooling. Before global warming. Uh, so in that discussion, you've got many people that are up in arms. I've had personally uh, a few people I know really get upset with me for just asking questions and not saying I'm not saying anything other than, well, this doesn't make sense, and what about this? And I'm just asking questions, and people have gotten very upset, and they've called me archaic and blind, and a number of other things when it comes to that topic. And again, I just go, why? What I mean, it's not like there's not other people that have different opinions on this. It's not like there's plenty of other, uh, viable resources of information that disagree with this. Well, what's the issue? Why are you so upset about it? I'm confused by that.
Now, suppose someone said you're just being an idealist and you do need to put some filters and all this stuff. If you just let everything go wild, then it'll be a terrible, terrible place for some reason. What could be the problem if um, that people will just begin to believe things that aren't true?
I guess. I mean, I guess, but isn't that true about some of the stories that we hear that are widely published and talked about? So imagine, just step back for a minute. Imagine just a couple of the things that we've discussed. And again, these are just a few things of a very bigger issue, very bigger problem. But take the Jesse Smollett story, take the Covington High School story, and imagine that there weren't alternative voices saying, "Hey, wait, ask this question, and what about this, and what about that?" Imagine they just ran with the original story, and that was it. They would have people believing a completely false story, and they seem to be okay with that. There seems to be no problem with running those things and people believing things that just aren't true.
And that sounds like what Malcolm X was talking about.
Yeah.
In 1965, I believe he was assassinated. Around that time, I can imagine that the news media had a major stronghold over the narrative.
Mm-hmm. That's
Almost
right.
insurmountable, it would seem, because They have it all, really. There's the newspapers and the
Yep.
news media, and where else are you going to get information about the world?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if that story that you just brought up came out back then, you might have an enduring fake story out there in the news.
Yeah. Well, you take figures like him, for instance, Malcolm X. He's very often portrayed as a hero of progressives. Uh, and when you start reading what he's actually saying, I don't think so. I don't think so. It's one of those things again where you start looking into it and you go, well, yeah, that all sounds good, but at the end of the day, he doesn't agree with what you're saying. He's not trusting the news. He's not trusting the media at all. And the few quotes that we've talked about are obviously there, but there's a lot more that goes into, you know, his story. And you start realizing, well, yeah, no, what we've heard about him and what's published about him often is very different than, you know, if you start looking into it, very different than what reality is. So just more notable, kind of interesting stuff that, for whatever reason, exists, and I would say, it's there. I don't know why people aren't more interested in it, but it's there.
All right. I think we've got all our bases covered.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I
we're
think
good.
this might be us wrapping it up. Basically, thumbs down on the news, thumbs up on the DJ Ron show.
Well, yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, at least at least as far as discussions are concerned, right? I mean,
And only the news we don't like.
no, no, no. I would challenge you or anybody. I would say, do you feel like someone came out with a story that kind of went against some of the stuff that you thought was true? If somebody came out with a story and said, "Look, here it is," do you feel like that would be problematic for you, or do you feel like you would go, "Oh no, okay, I'm going to entertain this"? Because I feel like, from my experience with you, and I feel like with some of my own experiences, that I've been presented with information that conflicts with some of the things I believe, and I've been willing to say, okay, not all that comfortable, not something I'm ready to say yay or nay against right at this point, but I'm at least going to have the conversation. I'm at least going to, allow
You're
somebody
gonna
to,
have the comments section allowed.
yeah, I'm going to have the comment section allowed. I mean, for instance, we had a friend on the show. Obviously, you know, he went and spouted a number of things that just aren't true, um, and spilled a couple hours of garbage, to be quite honest. But at the end of the day, I didn't walk away from that going, that can't happen anymore. We need to shut that down. Nobody's allowed to do that anymore. I mean, that didn't happen. Um, I think I would say that in certain situations, if somebody's just completely unreasonable, and they're just like completely shutting down any kind of information, as like turning off comment sections, and they're not allowing those things to happen, then that seems more problematic to me than, um, opening up a comment section, allowing people just to talk, even if you disagree with it.
It's all very interesting, and I'm even getting skeptical of the stories I agree with now because I'm having more and more distrust of the media in general. So everything is taken with a grain of salt. While I'm not the best at being skeptical of everyone, I just feel a little cautious, even more as time goes on with everything I hear. That's not me denying it, but that's just me saying that there's enough stories out now that you kind of see the bend in the writer, what they're swayed towards, and enough stories that didn't quite turn out to be exactly what the headline Matt actually stated. So it's I guess that's the way we're supposed to be. At least that's what they teach in high school. Anyhow, critical thinking, right? Isn't that something?
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it again, it's just a discussion. It's not. I mean, I don't know why having the discussion is so controversial. I don't know why that, people get so upset. Well, I understand. I understand a little bit. I'm not going to say I completely
Or clueless.
are clueless, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, you know, it's like, if you just take the story about, the Covington High School situation, you just go, what are the facts? What's really going on with that situation? Why somebody would be so upset to learn that, no, the white kid with the smirk and the Trump hat, um, wasn't being racist, and he wasn't being disrespectful, and he wasn't doing any of the things that he was accused of doing, and it was actually the opposite. Why anybody would walk away from that and go, ah, fake news and blah blah blah. I can, shut that. Stop talking about that. That's racist. That's hateful. And I don't get that. I don't get why a Ben Shapiro is banned from campuses. I don't get why Milo is banned from campuses.
Well, it's
I don't
because
understand.
Ben Shapiro is anti-Semitic and Milo
Yeah,
Yiannopoulos is homophobic.
yeah. Well, and I don't get why
And that
like
other
somebody like,
speaker I told you about with the African American man, as he would be described as a white supremacist. Come on.
yeah, yeah, and I
Anyway,
don't
anyhow.
and I don't understand why Candace Owen is such a controversial figure. I mean, she's just simply talking. She's just simply putting her ideas out there, and yet she's she's
All right.
such, yeah.
All right. High five. DJ Ron Show at gmail.com. We're going to get that person who's going to ask for the signed t-shirt because they listen to
Or
the all the way to the end of the show. And when they
or
listen all the way to the end of the show,
they will get a sign.
they'll know to send a email to djronshow at gmail.com to get their free signed t-shirt sent to them.
And they might get the first one, which I'm assuming the very first edition of that would be like significant.
Well, it might even come with stains on it from when I was throwing out an old shirt.
Hey, what happened to Deep State Dana tonight? I mean, she's
She had a
completely absent.
toothache and she was asleep when I went in there to check on her. So I
Okay.
think eventually she went offline. I don't know. I hope she's okay in there. All right. You have a
Okay.
wonderful week.
You too.